Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us today for the Safety and Health magazine webcast sponsored by Alert Media. We are going to give our audience just a moment to settle in today, and we'll start the presentation shortly. Hi, folks. We appreciate you being here today for the Safety and Health magazine webinar sponsored by Alert Media. We're going to give everyone just a minute to settle in, and we'll start the presentation in just a moment. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health magazine webcast, How to Reduce Serious Injuries and Fatalities in the Workplace, sponsored by Alert Media. My name is Barry Botino, and I'm an associate editor in Safety and Health and a co-host of the On the Safe Side podcast. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items to share with you all today. As a disclaimer, the views of today's speakers and organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean the council or the magazine endorses those items. After today's presentation, there will be a Q&A with our speakers. If you have a question, please send it in to us at any time during the event by clicking on the Q&A button located at the bottom of your screen, typing in your question, and pressing the send button. We may not get to every question today, but all unanswered questions will be forwarded along to our speakers. After the event, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey. The survey will open in a different screen after this webinar. Your input is very important to us because it does help us to improve our future webcasts. Finally, this webcast will be archived so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, please visit safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events, or you'll also receive a link in your post-event email. Now I'd like to welcome in Katie Goen, Director of Content and Communications at Alert Media, to take us through today's event. Hello, Katie.
Hi, Barry. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really excited for today's discussion about reducing serious injuries and fatalities, also known as SIFs, also known as SIFs, in the workplace, right? Because it can be a challenge for any organization. It is not specific to size, location, or industry. And as you all probably know better than anyone, SIFs can have devastating organizational impacts. But we are lucky that our special guest today is an expert in this topic, so I'd love to introduce him to you now. Mark Jones is here with us, and he is the EHS Director at Plastipack Packaging, a global leader in packaging and recycling that was recently named one of America's safest companies. Prior to Plastipack, Mark had a safety leadership role at Ford Motor Company for 30 years, where he helped develop a system that significantly reduced SIFs in that organization. So we are in great hands today. Hello, Mark. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Hi, Katie. Delighted to be here. Thanks.
Wonderful. I'd also like to introduce you all to Peter Steinfeld. He has been involved in the emergency communications industry for more than 20 years now. He is the Senior Vice President of Safety Solutions at Alert Media, where he works closely with a wide range of organizations to help support their employee safety, business continuity, and emergency preparedness initiatives. Peter is also the host of the Employee Safety Podcast at Alert Media, so he has the opportunity to interview safety leaders and subject matter experts in safety from major organizations and agencies like McDonald's, Salesforce, FEMA, the CDC. And fun fact, Mark was on our podcast earlier this year for a special episode on National Safety Month. So you're definitely going to want to check out that episode when you get a chance. But back to you, Peter. Thank you so much for being here, and we're excited to get things rolling today.
Absolutely. It's fantastic to be here. And Mark, so happy to present with you. The podcast was a lot of fun, and I think this will be too.
Excellent. Well, guys, first thing I want to do is just go over the agenda today. First, Peter's going to start by discussing the state of serious injuries and fatalities today. Then we're going to turn it over to Mark, who's going to explain how these SIFs happen and also his blueprint for reducing them. We're going to review some best practices for engaging your employees in safety and SIF reduction strategies. And then finally, we're going to take some questions from you guys before we wrap up. So to get things started, I would love to go ahead and launch our first poll. And we will have a few polls throughout today, so I do encourage you to participate in those when they pop up. First, we're going to ask, how confident are you in your organization's current SIF reduction strategies? So would you say you're highly confident, confident, neutral, not confident, or perhaps you don't currently have SIF reduction strategies? So I'm going to give you guys just another few seconds to get those answers in, and then let's go ahead and close out that poll and we can share the results. Perfect. Well, interestingly enough, all of our answers are represented here, so that's great, but it's kind of looking like most folks are in that confident kind of area. So let me ask you first, Mark, is that about what you expected to see here today?
I'm absolutely delighted to see it and knowing that people are concentrating on this. So it's really great news. And hopefully we can just share some best practices to even take those a step up.
Excellent. And I am noticing here that our neutral number is going up just a little bit. So it looks like it's almost about balance between neutral and confident. So Peter, does that call anything out specifically for you?
I'm really happy to see that people are in that confident and neutral stage, which means they're thinking about it, they're doing things today, but they're looking to get better. So that's really great.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for participating in that poll. We are going to move on now to Peter, who's going to talk about how to give you, or excuse me, he's going to give you some statistics on serious injuries and fatalities and why it's become so increasingly challenging to keep up with SIF prevention. So Peter, take it away.
Excellent, will do. And just a few slides here to set the context, and then Mark will get into everything he's going to share, which is going to be fantastic. But to start, despite a renewed focus on workplace health and safety, SIFs have unfortunately risen in numbers since the pandemic. And while this trend might seem like a natural result of people just going back to work post-pandemic, return to work actually is just one of many reasons for the increase. Other reasons, according to the National Safety Council, are increased hours for workers, as well as worker shortages, which can lead to employee burnout and fatigue. Real big culprits there. So it's a real recipe for increased accidents and injuries. In fact, on December 16th of 2022, OSHA's Assistant Secretary issued a statement noting that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics identified a one-year increase of nearly 9% in fatal work injuries, which was actually the highest annual rate since 2016. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at how these numbers play out by industry. From the Bureau's detailed 2021 data set, preventable fatalities, I like to make that distinction, preventable fatalities in manufacturing rose from 300 to about 347. Preventable fatalities in transportation and warehousing jumped from 749 to about 900. And then preventable fatalities in construction actually remained fairly even, just falling a bit slightly from 958 to 946. Now, the Bureau is going to release the 2022 numbers on December 19th, so not far away. And it will definitely be interesting to see if things trended the same way as 2021. Now, with serious incidents and fatalities on the rise, safety professionals are certainly looking for ways to predict, reduce, and then ultimately eliminate all of these across all industries. But it can be quite a challenge because SIF prevention requires a really deep working knowledge of the specific environments, the workflows, and behaviors that put employees at risk, and they're so different for different organizations. So that leads to the question, how do safety professionals find the time to become more knowledgeable in these areas when you're focused on the other important elements of workplace safety, like complying with agency regulations, overseeing site and equipment inspections, and then conducting safety meetings or trainings and all those things? Well, the first instinct a lot of people have is to look at the data. So while predicting and reducing SIFs depends on data insights, traditional safety metrics can be somewhat limiting. Metrics like things like employee training records, the frequency of toolbox talks or the safety meetings that you conduct, and the number of safety audits that you do can all provide really valuable insights into your overall safety program, but they don't really clearly identify the hazardous conditions that put employees at risk for serious injuries and fatalities. Incident-based metrics like total recordable incident rate and OSHA's days away, restricted, or transferred are pretty useful for benchmarking safety programs, but are fairly inadequate without consistent and reliable incident reporting from employees. Now, one last item before I go ahead and turn things over to Mark. Safety professionals are really increasingly tasked to juggle more and more tasks, which is pressuring them from all angles. For starters, OSHA did set a bigger annual inspection goal than ever before in 2023 and approved nearly 30 new actions for this year alone. And as a result, a lot of health and safety professionals find themselves just struggling to keep up with compliance, which is putting additional strain on the existing budgets, staff, and resources. The global threat intel landscape also continues to essentially intensify with all sorts of disasters and crises, increasing both in size, frequency, and impact. There's just more people that seem to be in disaster zones. And that results in a stronger likelihood of concurrent emergencies or disasters. Used to be you dealt with one thing at a time. Now it's like you're dealing with 2 or 3 disasters all simultaneously. And then additionally, some organizations are experiencing labor or economic issues, rising costs due to inflation, and even layoffs, leaving safety teams sometimes very lean and understaffed. Plus, leadership often expects all the safety professionals out there to prove the return on investment for their safety initiatives. It's horrible that we have to do that, but we do in this industry. Now, all this is just a lot to manage while you're trying to prioritize SIF reduction, which is why we're so lucky to have Mark share his SIF reduction insights and his overall framework that can really help you make sense of it all. So with that said, I'm done. Mark, back to you. You get some great information to share.
Thanks, Peter. I think it's important to understand the gravity of the situation. We talk about SIFs. So we'll start by defining them and then learning what causes them. So SIFs can be life-ending, life-threatening, life-altering. It's interesting. There was a recent article within Professional Safety that outlined this model. I thought it was probably the most basic and simple thing that I've seen, just to outline what these mean. We talk about life altering. These are life-changing events for folks. It means they can't go home to their families the way they came to work, whether they may have loss of use of a limb or even a body part, or hearing loss, or something serious that it changes their ability to impact with their families. It's just unacceptable, and things that we as safety professionals need to take on as a challenge to really, really focus on. I will start by saying I think this is the most important slide of the entire presentation. So I would really ask you, when this is done, to go back and really take a look at this. So I really want to talk about what we call these SIF precursors. The short definition is these are the warning signs, right? These are those conditions, behaviors that, if left uncorrected, the attitudes, that these could lead to a SIF. And I think we really need to do some soul searching as safety professionals to understand what these mean to us. In fact, we've done a few things with these in our organization, and I'll talk about a few of them. But we first of all got together with our EHS team, and we went through these and really tried to understand where we thought our vulnerabilities were with, as an organization. Then we took it a step further. We had a site leadership meeting just this week with all of our site steering teams and took them through this as well, and have asked them to really do some soul searching, to understand. So there's a lot here. I just want to talk about maybe just a couple broad categories as how I think you can use this. I first of all want to say too, this came from Empirical, and Rod Courtney and his team. I thought it's the most comprehensive list I've seen. I really want to thank them for sharing it with us. So I think there's a couple things here. First of all, you see things about departure from routine, not familiar with task, meaning we're asking people to do something they may not be highly familiar with. They may not do it a lot. The second piece is maybe towards that bottom columns, the safety attitudes, production pressures, stop work execution, that people potentially have a perception that that safety takes the back seat to production. It can't be that way, right? You know, safety has to be a core value of an organization. Our COO defines it as a moral imperative, right? It's something we have to do. So again, a lot of these are just perceptions, but as we know, perceptions become realities to our workers. So again, I would ask you after this, go back and take a look through these and have some deep, rich dialogue, because I think there's a lot to be done, a lot to learn from these precursors. So this is probably one of my favorites, just a subject that I love to talk about. We call it the ultimate precursor, and that's that normalization of deviance. So here's a quote from a social science professor, as you can see it. But really what's happening is that there's this lower perception of risk or higher risk tolerance resulting from repeated exposures. And that happens because we're normally successful. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's say you're working on a roof, and the roof is, let's say, 20 feet in the air. So, you know, you get there the first day, the leading edge says, I got to stay back 6 feet. So you stay back 6 feet. Over time, things are going well, and suddenly you need to get 5 feet from the edge of the roof. Well, then you get 5 feet from the edge of the roof. It's this tendency to drift because, again, your risk tolerance has changed. And the fact that you're normally successful and nothing happens, it becomes the new normal. So that's really what that chart shows within that spiral chart, is that there's this normal practice. We deviate. Why do we deviate? Because we're all creatures of efficiency. We all do it. It's natural. We find the best way to do things. And you know what the difference between an injury and a best practice is sometimes? It's outcome, right? But this natural drift can potentially lead to issues. The thing that I think is important to bring about with this slide is there's the tide of complacency, right? We do things for a while. It's natural to get complacent. Has anybody ever driven home from work? You don't remember that path home? That's that complacency taking over, right? What's the opposite of complacency? It's chronic unease, right? It's always realizing that that risk of working on that roof, you know, that 20-foot drop, it's always there, whether I'm 6 feet, 5 feet, and the closer I get, the more risk I put. Then I throw distractions. You line up that Swiss cheese model, as we've all learned as safety professionals. And lastly, you have an event. Lastly, just a personal story. Having several children that have gone through driver's ed, and I was the appointed one to teach them how to drive in a family. You think about that first day coming out of driver's ed, right? Their hands are at 10 and 2. The radio is turned off. The phone is down. What do you see 6 months later? Is it still like that? You really wish it would, but you get some drift. It's that normalization of deviation that begins to take over. Okay, so now let's talk about a blueprint for reducing SIFs within your organization that we've used within our organization as well. So there's 3 basic steps to this, right? It's, what are the work steps? What needs to get done? And again, this is the 101 version. We're going to go a bit deeper, but the basic price of admission is we need to understand those steps, the hazards, the controls, right? What we're going to do, and we'll go into further detail to really talk about these in more detail. I think this is really, really important. There's some work that's been done by Hollowell and others on this about this energy wheel. When you think of it, it's really energy. It's a form of energy that's leading to serious injuries and fatalities. It's whether it be a gravity issue, whether it be electrical, it's some form of energy that then releases that the person is exposed to. So it's really important that we understand both the source, where it's coming from, as well as the magnitude, and the workers understand that. Again, if there's nothing more that we do than helping people understand energy sources and that effect that they may have on them, this is golden. This is really where we have to go with our workers. In sticky, I just love the term stuff that could kill you. Every company, every organization has some potential energy sources, and that's where you start. It could be electrical related, right? It could be working at heights. It could be confined space. That's the starting price of admission of those sticky events or sticky programs where we really need to start. Because really what we want to do is have people to have proficiency to perform work safely, right? You want a level of proficiency to perform work safely. So whether addressing the high-risk work or those non-routine tasks. Again, every company defines those differently. Some companies say it's work that's not done at least monthly. Some say it's not work it's not done at least quarterly. Whatever you use, it doesn't matter. Meaning people need to have the proficiency to perform work safely. And that's what's critically important as we address this energy wheel. Next, I'm going to something that we all as safety professionals see, but I really want to spend some time and talk just a little bit more about this and maybe some things that you can think about. So again, the hierarchy of controls, it's there, but it really needs to be there when we talk about these sticky events, these SIF events, because these are adding capacity to fail safely. So the classic example I can think of is fall protection. If you wear fall protection, do you still fall? Yes, you do. But what happens? It protects you from falling to the ground and not being seriously injured. So we need to add capacity and really understanding what's the work that's being done and how we can add capacity and add layers of capacity. And I have an example that I'll talk to you about later that we were able to do that from my previous experience. But this is really, really critically important. Again, we started at the top of that and we work our way down knowing that PPEs last. We all know that as safety professionals. And lastly, the thing that I don't think we do and talk about enough is asking for help. If workers don't understand the job, they're new to it, they haven't had the experience of it, we really need to have sort of this psychological safety for them that people need to speak up and ask for help when they don't understand the work that we're asking them to do. So this is a recent segment that I've learned. I thank Bob Edwards for actually bringing this to our attention. And it's really making sure that this is sort of that last line of defense, is it before we start work, that we make sure that that person's ready to work, right? And there's a couple sides of this. First of all, you have the physical side of that. That's the stuff that we all get, right? The tools, the equipment, you got the right PPE, and then everybody knows their role, right? Who's going to do what? On the right side, you got the mental readiness, right? You have to have your head in the game, right? If you're feeling rushed, frustrated, fatigued. I was recently visiting a site and I watched some people getting into a task and you could tell they were just frustrated. We went over and tapped them on the shoulder and said, hey, just take a break, step back, right? You need people to be calm, cool, collected. They need to have their head in the game before they start doing a task. And if they don't know what they're doing, ask for help, get a supervisor, get a knowledgeable person. The last thing here, a new concept I just absolutely love, move with your eyes first. Move with your eyes first. So the physical readiness, the mental readiness, right? That's sort of that planning phase. That's that preparation phase. As we get into more of the execution, the tactics, the first thing we should be doing is telling people, move with your eyes first. Again, would you cross the street without looking, right? You've made the plan, you've seen the stoplight, the sign says walk, you're going to look. You don't take that for granted. We should do the same thing, right? Move with your eyes first. Don't move with your hands and feet, right? Do that first before you start work. And I think having this type of blueprint and a start when ready attitude is critically important and can really help save people from being injured. And of course, I think we need to talk about stopping the job. Again, this becomes then the last line of defense. Again, who within your organization has stop work authority? I hope the answer is everyone, from the most seasoned employee to the newest person on the job. Again, the new person on the job is potentially seeing something through a set of lenses that other people don't see. We really want all that input. What are those conditions that would trigger starting the job? What's an example there is that, let's say that you started an excavation job and it happened to rain as you started the excavation job, or you're doing outdoor work and you're suddenly in 30-mile-an-hour winds. That's absolutely a big change than where you started. You need to regroup on that. And secondly, unexpected outcomes. You're doing something and what you're expecting to happen doesn't seem right. Again, let's say you're operating a crane. You press the up button, you press the down button, the crane doesn't move. Should you continue to press and mash? You got to step back, right? When you're dealing with a crane, you're dealing with a lot of stored energy. You're dealing with really massive weights. You're dealing with gravity. If something's not working with that crane, we need to step back and understand why it's not working. So stop the job is something that should be celebrated. I know there's companies that track that. They actually monitor this. Everybody should have the authority to do it. And again, the last thing I say is, don't be afraid about talking about this within your organizations. Stopping the job doesn't mean I stop and go take a coffee break and come back in 30 minutes. It means I'm pulling back, I'm taking a pause, I'm reassessing, reapproaching, and then starting the job. And I really just want to close this section with a quote and really a new definition of safety. Is it safety is really not the absence of accidents, because there's a luck factor there, right? Safety is having the capability to fail safely. I mentioned the fall protection example, but I really want to talk to one in a bit more detail that I think really imparts sort of collecting all that together. So when I worked at Ford, we obviously assembled motor vehicles. And within the assembly operations, we use a lot of fasteners. We're attaching parts to that vehicle, and we're using a lot of high torque hand tools. You could say, okay, you're using a hand tool, you shouldn't be wearing gloves. I'm telling you, fasteners have greases, they have oils, they have splinters in them. People want to wear gloves. And unfortunately, we were seeing traumatic amputations of people's fingers. We were seeing several a year. Absolutely unacceptable, and we needed a means to do it. So we started with a hierarchy of controls. So what do? We went to the tool manufacturers. We engaged them. We tried to get to the torque and torque limits. We went a step further then, and we made sure all those tools were covered. The shafts were covered and everything that was there. So that again, we're limiting the exposure that somebody could have to potentially come in contact with those tools. But occasionally we're still seeing some near misses and a couple serious injuries. And somebody had this clever idea. I would have bet my paycheck it couldn't happen. And a guy came to me, he was working for me, and he said, "Mark, what do you think about a tearaway glove?" And I said, "A tearaway glove? I think you're nuts." Right? He says, "No, a glove that if everything else failed, and if that glove were to grab one's finger, it would tear away." I said, "You think it can happen?" He said, "Can I work on it?" I said, "Go work on it." I am pleased to tell you they have developed tearaway gloves. So along this back finger area, it's a lesser stitching, and it's made that if you had somebody's hand were to get grabbed by these by these high torque tools, it just simply tears away, and it works. They've seen absolute successes in it. They have made their reduction of amputations go down to zero, a huge success. And then to even take it to the next level, they've come up with these in high torque tools. So that's really taking it to the next level. So Katie, I think you have another poll for the audience now, correct?
I do. Thank you. And that was an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. I do want to quickly just launch another poll just to check in, see how everybody's feeling. So this question is, which SIF reduction strategy that Mark just talked about do you feel the most prepared to implement at your organization? Is it maybe the identifying hazards and energy sources, some of the sticky stuff that Mark was talking about? Maybe it's identifying the controls, or maybe just starting the job or stopping the job. So just let us know which one you're most prepared to implement right now. I'm going to give that another couple seconds, and then we can go ahead and share those results, please. Okay, so identifying hazards and energy sources, some of that sticky stuff, that's by far our attendees' biggest concern today. Mark, any thoughts there?
No, I just think it's absolutely wonderful, though, that people are concentrating. Again, if you talk about the single most important piece that what we've learned, it's really identifying those sources, because that's what people need to know. Again, understanding the source and then that magnitude. So no, that's great. I appreciate that.
Peter, anything to add to that?
I would just say that, it'd be nice if more people could say, I feel incredibly confident that people in our organization can stop the job. And I see how that is really difficult, because nobody wants to. I don't want to be that guy or that lady that stopped the production for the day. That's a tough one. So I'm not surprised to see those numbers there, but something we should all think about how we can work on and improve.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to our best practices. We're just going to talk about how to engage employees in SIF reduction with both insights from Mark and Peter. Things like safety meetings, reporting, communication, really, really important elements. So Mark, I'm going to first turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Katie. I mean, the key word you said there is engagement. And there's a number of ways we're going to talk about doing that, but it's that really critical nature of that communication and having everybody involved in the process. So based upon how complex the job is, and we're going to talk more about it, if nothing more, there needs to be this huddle, right? Think about a football play, right? The quarterback calls a huddle. What's it take? 30 seconds, 35 seconds between plays, right? It's quick. It's just getting everybody together, sort of knowing what's getting done by who and how is getting done. That's the absolute price of admission. You need to have a huddle before starting any high-risk work. But the second piece is there's a time that a huddle is not enough. Again, there's no one size fits all to, specifically define that. But again, if you're into really high-risk work, if you have a lot of vendors and contractors working together, if there's super high energy sources, maybe there's multiple cranes, lifting sources, complex rigging, major projects. At that point, it goes beyond just the discussion. At that point, you then need to document the job. Going back to that earlier slide that we talked about, what's the job steps? What's the hazards? What's the controls? And review that with everybody so everybody's confident to know what's going to get done, by who and how it's going to get done. But most importantly, what are those controls that are in place to safeguard all of the employees? So this is something that I recently learned, and I just love this slide, so I'm just going to talk a bit about it. So I recently saw this quote, and it's fixed in my brain. It says, "Talk to the warriors. The conversation is different." What do we mean by the warriors? The warriors, we mean the people who are out on the job sites doing the job, the people that know the jobs better than anybody. It's not us safety professionals. It's not the supervisors, the people that do the work every day. And as I mentioned, they do the work, they know the work, they're creatures of efficiency. They're going to find ways to do that job even better and more efficient. So what things can we ask them? This 4D model, the sources there, I would offer you, to look it up. Is, what are we asking people to do that just doesn't make sense? They'll say, "Why do you guys do it this way?" They potentially have a better way to do it. Let's learn from that, right? Let's learn that things more safe, more efficient, whatever comes out of that. What do we ask people to do that's difficult? I find this is very prevalent around preventive maintenance tasks. Have we made lubrication points accessible, right? Or do we make them in these hard to reach areas but I have to climb a ladder to access things? I was recently at a site as most recent as 2 weeks ago, and they said we have to climb on top of this piece of equipment once a week to change this filter. Why'd we do it that way? Well, I don't know. Now we're going to spend $10,000 to put it on the floor because we want to put people at risk of going up there, right? Things like that. What have we done to make things difficult? What about making things different, right? Here, again, one of my pet peeves, one of my Marxism quotes, equipment reliability impacts fate. Let me say that again. Equipment reliability impacts fate. If we have equipment that's not running well, it's tempting people to do something that's unsafe. We're frustrating people. These are off-standard conditions, right? If that equipment is frequently jamming up, I'm going to go in there. I may not lock out. Again, I'm tempted. You could say they should lock out. I get it, right? We're tempted because people get frustrated because equipment isn't running correctly. Again, I've unfortunately investigated dozens, if not 100 different amputations within my career. I will say in the high 90s% relates to equipment reliability. Something we really, really need to focus on. You want to know where your problems are in a plant? Go look at the equipment that's not running well. I bet you have high turnover on those sites, on that equipment. If you have high quality, people don't want to work on those, right? People get frustrated. And lastly, what's dangerous? That fourth D. Again, I guarantee you go talk to any maintenance person, even production operators. There's something that they're asked to do that they're happy when it's over, right? Man, I really don't like doing this particular maintenance task. I have this unease when doing it. We need to go ask those questions. Because if that's making those workers uneasy because they're worried about it dangerous, that is golden data for us as safety professionals to know what are the right things that we need to go address to impact worker safety. So I'm switching gears here a bit, but I think this is really critically important to talk about near-miss reporting. Again, I've investigated a lot of SIF events in my career, and it's rare. It is rare that it is a lightning strike. What I mean by that is really rare that that's the first time that ever happened. If I seen it, I could probably count on one hand. Most notably, it's probably happened somewhere else as we got into the investigation, but whether it wasn't properly reported, whether it was reported not acted upon, whatever that is, somebody didn't feel comfortable to report it. We really need people to report near misses, right? Again, there's simple, forms you can fill out. OSHA has a great, near miss reporting template. If you ask me what are sort of the three components that I think is in a great near miss, what's wrong, right? We want to know what's wrong. That's the price of admission. Secondly is how do you fix it? And if the worker fixes it themselves, wonderful. And if you want to go to the next level, for those that want to be the summa cum laudes, how do we prevent it? So very simple example. I find an oil leak, I'm able to fix it, and here's how I'm able to prevent it. Again, really simple, but again, is getting these are golden. These are really what we need from our organization to be effective. Again, one more quote. I'm a rule of threes, 3 words. Predictable is preventable. Predictable is preventable. Predictable is preventable. If we know what's going on and people are telling us about it, that's what we need to know so we can go prevent it from happening and causing an SIF event. So something I really like to talk about is a culture of, reporting, why this is so important. I work for a company that has an incredible near-miss reporting system. How do we do that? Is that there's no punishment. There is no retaliation. We want people to do it. We encourage it, we expect it, and we celebrate it. We applaud people for standing up and saying that we have issues. Within our company globally, we had 42,000, and we're going to exceed that number this year, of worker engagements talking about safety. Part of those are near misses, about half of those. The other part are just safety engagements proactively talking about safety. And then when people do have near misses, it's important we have credibility. Because again, if people report a near miss and we don't follow up, there's no credibility. There's is leadership really serious? For us, we have a bogey of 90% closed out within 30 days. And you follow up with the associates so that A, they report it, B, we thank them, and C, we come back and say, hey, you reported this. Here's what we found. And guess what? Even if you can't fix it, if you get back to people and tell them, that continues to build credibility with your safety program. It's critically important. So with that, I have one last slide and I'll turn it back over to Peter. And I really want to talk about HOP and how HOP really impacts SIS. For those of you who don't know what HOP is, I can't teach you today, but go look it up. It's something you as a safety professional critically need to know about. And it's really the future of success within the safety community. So again, how are HOP affecting SIFs? First of all, people make mistakes. The more complexity, the more variability we add to our processes, right? When you see a 7-page job instruction sheet, are people going to remember all those? People will make errors, right? And we need to be thinking through how do we make those things even more simple and design those errors out, right? Error-proofing those processes. Blame fixes nothing, right? In fact, it's quite the opposite. And I will tell you that the organizations I've seen that put blame on workers, it discourages reporting and it puts reporting underground. It drives it underground. If somebody knows that if they get injured and we're going to initially go to the D word, that's discipline, versus trying to learn and understand, right? It's going to drive reporting underground and we'll learn nothing. Again, if I take a worker out of it and put the next worker in, the same thing happens, it's a process problem. It's not a worker problem, and we need to address it. Context drives behavior. Maybe a better word for context becomes the word circumstance. What is the person seeing, right? Are they fatigued, right? Are there production demands? Is it broken equipment? Is it reliable equipment? Are these cramped quarters? Is it a hot day? Is it a cold day? As I say, a quarterback doesn't mean to throw an interception. They make the best decision based upon the information they have. Our workers do the same thing every day. And guess what? They're normally successful. They're really successful over 99% of the time. So we need to learn that the context of what they're facing is driving those behaviors. Again, learning becomes vital. If we want to learn and improve and prevent fatalities, we need to make sure it's clear to people. We really want them to bring those forward. We want them to talk to us, right? And lastly, how leaders respond to failure matters. If a leader goes up to a breakdown situation and says, how long before you get the line back up and running? Or do they say, have you locked out the equipment to make sure it's safe and in a zero energy state before you start work? That sets an entirely different mindset to those workers as to what management prioritizes from a safety. The other thing that's clearly is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Meaning that, is that a heartfelt concern, or is it safety off the lips or safety in the hearts, right? So we need leadership to be heartfelt in their approach and that really caring for others mindset when they come up to a job and talk to workers to respond when there's been a failure in the organization, that somebody's potentially gotten injured or there's been a near miss. So with that, Peter, I'd like to turn it over to you to discover more some of these aspects about communication.
Absolutely. Thank you. So many great tidbits of information you gave there. Fantastic tips. I hope people's wrists hurt from writing all those notes about what you were saying. We will provide the recording so you can go back and listen to this again. There's just so many great things. So thank you, Mark. All right. Well, let's jump into this. A couple more slides, and then we'll have some time for one more poll and some Q&A. But when it comes to engaging your employees, it really is all about establishing trust. I think you saw that theme come through with some of the things that Mark was talking about. When you demonstrate and then communicate that employee safety is indeed your top priority, your employees will absolutely be more productive and more loyal to your organization. I actually hear stories about this all the time on the podcast, and we've done several hundred episodes, and people share these stories, so it's true. And there really is no downside to putting the health and well-being of your people first. It's very important. Employees also want to know that their concerns have been heard and addressed, as Mark mentioned earlier. So you'll want to ensure that you communicate with your people about things like any improvements or upgrades that you've made to equipment, tools, PPE, or processes. You definitely want to reiterate safety policies and procedures, conduct safety and wellness checks following any kind of an emergency or crisis. That's always good to do. And then be sure to notify them about any facility closures or workflow disruptions that they should be aware of. And then, as Mark mentioned, communicate any safety achievements so your people can celebrate them. That's a really important thing to do. One way to streamline that communication is by investing in a modern emergency communication solution, which can really help you reach the right people with targeted messaging quickly and efficiently. And that's something that Alert Media does provide. Our software enables you to quickly reach small or very large groups of people over multiple channels, such as text, email, voice calls, computer pop-ups, and lots of other ways. So you can quickly share information and then even solicit feedback in real time from your recipients. Now, another way to really build that safety culture that Mark talked about and maintain trust with your people is to monitor and communicate both internal and external threats. So your employees can be extremely helpful in observing and reporting hazards internally, in addition to any near misses. But it's really important to have that same awareness when monitoring and identifying external threats to the organization. Things such as severe weather, natural disasters, planned protests or demonstrations that could really impact your operation, road closures and traffic disruptions, or even just suspicious activity or acts of violence that people might be witnessing. In order to achieve employee safety, I guess you could say holistically, you really need both frontline support from your people and proper tools and technology. That way, you have eyes and ears on threats developing both internally and outside the organization. So internally, it really can be as simple as an employee reporting something like a chemical spill, or strange odors, or maybe an exposed wire somewhere, or a security door that's propped open that shouldn't be. Or overhearing shouting or raised voices. There's just so many things. You want to encourage people to report that kind of stuff. And then outside the organization, externally, there are global threat intelligence solutions that can help you identify all sorts of emerging threats and help you understand the people and assets or locations that these threats could potentially impact. And Alert Media does offer such a solution there. In case you're curious and looking into that space, generally speaking, there are two types of threat intel systems for locating external threats. One really brings the fire hose approach, where you receive hundreds or thousands of alerts, and then you or your team have to sift through everything yourself, really to find what's relevant to you and your organization. And this type of system is good if you have the time or people to handle the work. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's the more curated approach, where you've got technology, but then humans with it that vet the intel and then only pass through what's been confirmed into the technology that you can then consume. That team does the work for you. And Alert Media does fall into that camp. Something else we do is provide the ability to chat with our analysts in real time. So that team that's highly trained around the clock is available to you, so you can ask them additional information about any kind of situation that might be going on. One last thing I'll recommend is that investing in a modern emergency communication tool that combines threat intelligence capabilities into it really allows you to monitor and then communicate all the threats that you're seeing from one single interface, saving you a tremendous amount of time. And in an emergency, time is of the essence. Generally speaking, the faster you can learn about something, the quicker you can react, and therefore the better outcome you'll experience. So hopefully everything we've shared today really sparks some new ideas. That's really the goal here for how to engage your employees around safety and security in general, in addition to gaining their buy-in on SIF reduction. That's so important. And that's all I have. So Katie, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And I'm glad you mentioned, some of those capabilities of Alert Media, because guys, you've heard from Peter, our communication expert. And as I launch this next poll right now, we're actually asking you guys if you want to even learn more about that. So we have a full team of experienced experts in environmental health and safety, security, business continuity, crisis management. So we're ready to help, but we would like for you to let us know. Would you like to hear more about how we can help? You can say yes, and we would gladly send you more information. You can also say no, not at this time, and no hard feelings. We'll always be here if you would like to reach us at a later time. So I'm going to give that just a couple more seconds, and we can go ahead and close that out now, because I really, really want to get to some questions now, right? And so we have a few of them coming in already, but just a reminder, you can use the Q&A box if you'd like to do that. So Mark, I'm going to start with you. We have a question here wondering if you can share an example of how leaders responding positively to failures has improved safety in the workplace. You kind of got into that a little bit in one of your slides.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly about the approach somebody takes. If it's sort of that I care attitude, right? Again, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. If you're coming at it to, from a safety mindset, again, back to that example, when a line is down, it's understanding to make sure everybody's working safely, putting the safety of the workers and then, production second. Again, we all understand you got to make widgets to make profit. We get there clearly, right? But we have to do that work safely. And there's no product or service that any company provides that is worth putting somebody at risk for, right? So it's showing that passion that the leaders need to demonstrate, that how they approach that particular issue when there's a problem within the organization, or even during investigations. If it's a thought that we're trying to find who screwed up so we can punish them, the reason you do incident investigations is to prevent a recurrence. That's the reason for it. It's not just the root cause. You want to prevent recurrence. That's the goal of any incident investigation.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. And I actually have a question here for Peter. Peter, with so many ways to communicate with employees, text messages, emails, internal newsletters, things like that, what can we do to what can we focus on to get in front of the most people, or does that vary?
Wow, I guess it really varies. We could spend the next 20 minutes talking about that. I think it really depends upon what you're trying to communicate and how broad that audience is. There's different levels of information, different severities behind it. So I think the best thing to do is really to think about, what do I need to communicate, and try to be very succinct. Then what's the proper channel to communicate that over? Sometimes it could be a single channel. I'm just going to post it to this internal website. People know to go there for general informational things. Or it's super critical. Let's get that out to as many channels as possible. And maybe we'll send a long email explaining everything, because email is appropriate for lots of information, but we'll accompany that with a text message. It's pretty short, but says, hey, this incident just came up, or we want you to be aware of this. Go to the email or the corporate website to learn more. And then the last thing I always recommend is just targeting your audience as precisely as possible, because if you just start sharing everything with everybody, guess what? Boy who cried wolf. Nobody pays attention. They get notification fatigue. So always be thinking, who needs to get this message, and try to keep it just to those people. Because if you start over communicating to other folks or under communicating, either way, it's not good.
Yeah, and I remember one thing that a podcast guest said also, Peter, which is, as you're thinking about that target audience, if you're trying to reach people working a line or in a distribution center, like they're not in front of a computer with an email address, right? They probably maybe can't even hear announcements overhead if they have ear protection. So, cell phone in the pocket might be the best way to go. Would you agree with that approach?
Yeah, you have to think about the person and what channel is available to them. And that's why multi-channel is so important, because you could have someone who literally is working on a factory floor doing something, and they're not even allowed to have their cell phone. So there's things you have to have, like, audible alarms, and then visual lights going off. Or you got a lot of people sitting in front of computers near their workstation. It could be on a manufacturing floor or in an office, and they're paying attention to nothing else. Have the message pop up on the screen. Don't just rely on a single channel, because it's not going to catch everybody. And there may be a bunch of people that 9 times out of 10, you can reach them on that one channel, but the one time you need to get them, they're not paying attention, and another one would be better. So multi-channel, multi-channel, multi-channel all day.
Got it. Thank you so much. Another one for you, Mark. How to impact senior management on the importance of monitoring and reducing staff turnover to reduce the probability of an incident occurring?
That's a tough one. I think every company that I know of has a help wanted sign out, right? And that impact on company culture, what we affectionately call that, dilution factor, right? And potentially have a new person training the new person, right? So it's really the focus on having really good mentoring programs up front, and really encouraging that employees should never do more than they're asked to do. I know it's easy to say, right? And you hire good people who want to do even more, but it's really saying that, hey, if I'm job shadowing somebody, when I take a break, they take a break, right? We take that break together. And lastly, I would just say safety has to be a core value, within an organization, right? It's that moral imperative that it just really has to stand out above all. But the last thing I want to say about new employees, again, just some best practices that we've learned talking to other companies, because we're all in the same boat of, the high employee turnover. Remember how I mentioned sort of that new student driver and, what goes on after 6 months? We've seen the same thing within our organization as well, whether it be new lift truck drivers or just new people. Again, after several months on a job, there's some bad habits that result. We're actually going back and circling back to them, right? Whether it be one of the safety committee members or EHS or even the supervisor saying, hey, look, our data tells us that you're in this group of employees that typically have incidents. Let's sit down and talk about it, whether we need to reaffirm some of the safe work practices or what issues they're seeing, or what issues maybe the normalization of deviation are going on. But circling back, and I think talking to new employees, it becomes really, really important in addition to that mentoring program.
Excellent. Yeah, that's good advice. I'm going to stick with you here, Mark, for just a second. Someone would like to know, how do you recommend implementing these types of tools and processes for a small business with limited resources?
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
Yep. I think the basic elements of this are really fairly simple. And again, I'm not trying to belittle anything I said, right? The price of admission is right. The steps, the hazards, controls, right? And then what do we add to that? On the front side, how do we safely start the job? What are the elements in place? And what do we have on the back and relative to stop the job, the stopgap? So again, we identify the task, hazards, controls, start the job, stop the job. That's really the essence of really what the SIF program is about. Or if nothing else, take a look at those precursors. Again, those precursors are golden opportunities to have upfront dialogue, and it's really predictive nature of understanding where that next one might be. That's the whole intention of SIFs, right? Is to get predictable as to what we see in our organization where we may have drift.
Gotcha. All right, we have time for one last question. So sorry, Peter, I'm going to stick with Mark on this one. Hope that's okay.
Fine, absolutely. I like hearing from him, so.
So, Mark, someone would like to know if you have an example that you could share of practicing or promoting employee well-being that correlates with contributing to improving a safety program. So, what's one thing a company can do to really demonstrate to employees that their well-being is important that also sort of builds safety culture?
Yeah, so I guess something that we've done, like I said, we have really, psychological safety to me is that price of admission, right? That it's a reporting culture, it's wanted, it's expected. We've changed from just being lagging indicators to being leading indicators as well. Again, it's a balance, right? But including things like near miss reporting is one of those leading indicators, and rewarding employees saying, please bring that forward. We want you to report. We value that. And recognizing those people. And if they bring out tough issues, thank you for reporting that, right? It's just going back and really recognizing people that kind of feedback is important for us to run the business safely.
And do you recommend any sort of incentives?
So I do, meaning that incentives, meaning we do it a couple different ways. Is that for people that, again, we have some sites that do it differently, but for reporting near misses, the name goes in the hat and we pick out a prize, a thank you. I've seen some sites that have sort of this graduated system, right? That, hey, the more you put in, right, you can earn points towards different company swag. And if you have a really highly evolved program, then we're in sort of to that quality side, meaning that not just the quantity of getting these in, but the quality. Somebody that's putting in this really good near miss. Again, it's talking about what's the find, what's the fix, what's the prevention, and we're rewarding those employees, those high quality near misses as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for answering those questions. That is all the time that we have for them right now. But as Barry said at the beginning, any that we didn't answer will come to us and we will kind of divide and conquer on those and get you some answers. But before I let you guys go, I mentioned that we have some additional resources. So if you're looking for more information on SIF prevention or building a safety culture, I mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. Mark was on the podcast. He did an excellent job. His episode is called Plastipack Strategies for Preventing Serious Injuries and Fatalities. So I highly advise you check that out. And then there's also a blog post that Alert Media has called Safety Moment Ideas, 24 topics for a strong discussion. So both of these resources can be found at alertmedia.com on our resources page. They are completely free, and you'll find some other great information there as well. So at this time, I'd just like to thank Mark Jones and Peter Steinfeld for joining us today. If you would like to connect with them to kind of keep the conversation going, you can find them both on LinkedIn under their full names. And so, Mark, I really just wanted to thank you for your time today. We really enjoyed your thoughts and expertise.
It's been my pleasure. It's been my 40-year career journey, and just happy the ability that I can share this and send people home to their families. That's what it's all about.
Couldn't agree more. And Peter, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure working with you.
Of course. Thank you. And thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Well, that concludes our presentation. I just want to thank you all for spending part of your day with us today. I hope you'll join us again for another Alert Media webinar. We always love seeing familiar names and faces on the registration lists. And of course, thanks to Safety and Health Magazine for hosting us and being such an incredible partner. And with that, Barry, I'm going to hand it back over to you.
Well, thanks, Katie. We appreciate the great presentation today. To our attendees, on behalf of the Safety and Health team, thank you for being here today. We'd appreciate you taking some time to share your feedback via our survey. A special thank you goes out to our fantastic presenters today, Katie Goen, Peter Steinfeld, and Mark Jones. Mark, we appreciated all the Markisms. Thank you. And of course, the entire team from our sponsor at Alert Media. This ends today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. Take care, everyone, and have a safe day.